we're going to rank the circuits today, something we thought would be a fun conversation here. Louisiana, California, Arkansas, Florida, New York, Kentucky. Where do you want to go here, Aaron, as your top circuit if you were going to rank them from the Kentucky Derby Trail?
I think you have to go from a depth perspective. Louisiana has got to be number one because it's produced so many horses out of that Risen Star that came back to win. And then, the horses that stayed around for the Louisiana Derby or the new shooters, they're pretty solid as well. So I put Louisiana number one. I certainly think it's just a situation where, for whatever reason, that Risen Star, a lot of horses pointed to it. Now, not all of them stayed for the Louisiana Derby, but it ended up being a huge race, probably the best race as far as a depth of the field goes. And I think we all have the same four horses as the likely winners, and two of those four horses were in the Risen Stars.
Mike, where do you put Louisiana if you were going to rank the circuits?
I've got Louisiana second because, look, both of the two of the four horses from California are in our top four as well. And so I would make the argument that California is the better circuit because I think if you said, hey, even money, you can have Zandon and Epicenter versus Messier and Taiba, I'm taking Messier and Taiba at even money. And so because of that, and we're taking those two, I'll go ahead and take that. Look, the depth, I agree with you, is better because, look, there's two horses you're taking in California. There's no one else that's really any interest, right? But the depth coming out of Louisiana is probably better. And you can talk about Zozos and Smile Happy ran there, and you've got Zandon who ran there. Well, Zandon's also kind of a New York horse if you want to go that direction, face Modongle up there in the Remsen. So the horses that came into Louisiana, yeah, they're underneath deeper. I'm not really calling them all Louisiana horses in that sense. And if we're talking about who's going to win the race, to me, I think that California is going to give you a better shot at winning the race than the horses coming out of Louisiana.
I'm going to side with Aaron on this one. I'm going to go Louisiana slightly over California, but I think you can make you guys are making solid cases for both of them. I just keep looking back at that Risen Star field where Epicenter beat Smile Happy, Zandon, Pioneer Medina, Tawny Port. Slow Down Andy would be in the Derby if it was healthy. So a lot of horses in the Risen Star moving forward. But listen, the California, I guess if you go from percentage-wise, Mike, there's a good percentage that's coming out of the California circuit for the Derby. They just don't have the quantity. Aaron, is California number two for you pretty clearly?
Yeah, absolutely. And the only reason I didn't rank it number one is we fall off wildly after the top two. I mean, wildly. So, there was just nothing out there past the top two in the Santa Anita Derby. And I will throw in Forbidden Kingdom because, he obviously had a problem in the Santa Anita Derby, but he was a nice horse. But, man, what was behind those horses? Wow, it's not great. And that, that's the one thing that does kind of worry you if you're going to back the California horses hard. Like, they beat up maybe on each other, but gosh, there is nothing out there that's really tested them. But, thankfully we have times and speed figures to kind of tell us, well, maybe they will match up okay with these other horses.
And workouts. Don't forget the morning works.
Well, sure.
Very important. So we're pretty much in agreement there. California, Louisiana, 1-2 is kind of a toss-up. 3 is where it gets interesting here. Mike, I'll go to you. Where do you have number 3?
This is tough, man. I think 5 is the easiest after this. It's the 3 and the 4 are tough. I'm going to go with Florida 3, which it means also, I don't really know what Kentucky counts as, right? I mean,
yeah,
because if Zandon is technically Louisiana, then he's not Kentucky, right? And then we're just talking about Tiz the Bomb and Tawny Port, and then I definitely don't have Kentucky in that 3 spot. New York, I'm always generally against, but you had a really good time in the wood. We're going to talk a little about Modongle, but I'm going to go with Florida just because before the Florida Derby, Florida was 1A to Louisiana's 1B without having the Bafferts in. So to me, obviously Florida had to get downgraded because of what came out of that. But don't forget, if you like Modongle got waxed in Florida by White Abarrio. Waxed. Never had a chance in that race. White Abarrio was cooled down and walking home, and Modongle was not making up much ground on him down the lane. So I'm going to say Florida is the 3rd best. And it's crazy because I don't know if I'm going to use anyone in the Super outside of California and Louisiana.
Wow. That's crazy. Aaron, did you have Florida 3 as well?
Yep, I think that makes total sense. I'll go ahead and talk about the number 4. I think New York is probably what we both have 4. Usually it's awful, right? Well, I say the last 10 years, let's say. It's just it's not good. I think it's the best it's ever been coming out of there. When you think about Mo Donegal, I mean, he certainly was proven to be a horse that's at least got a shot in this Derby. And you think about early voting, and we touched on a little bit on the first show we did. Okay, you're skipping the Derby. That's probably really smart. He's probably got a shot to make an impact, at least in the Preakness. And then, you go to the Belmont. Well, usually a New York horse does okay there. So I think they're going to be heard from on this Triple Crown Trail. Do they win any of the races? I'm not sure, but I think we're at least, they're in the conversation. We're talking about these horses throughout this whole process.
Yeah, Mo Donegal is one of the horses I'm most scared of going to the Derby because I'm probably not going to use him, and I will feel dumb if he runs up for third or fourth or something like that. It's interesting, like that Florida race is the one that really gets me off him. I feel like he's kind of a plotter, and he definitely could run up, and he is improving. The last race up the Wood was a very good race. The speed figure came back well. They ran sub 24s all the way home after the first quarter. So it's a strong prep race from a time perspective and from a numbers perspective. Early voting wasn't one that I was going to plan on using in the Derby. I was not as high on early voting as some other people. I also think that Mo Donegal got absolutely the perfect trip in that race, and that was part of the reason he was able to run down early voting. So for me, it's just he's one of those horses that I think is tough, and I understand why people were interested in playing him. He should take some money. I get that. For me, it's just a horse that I'm not going to end up using here. I don't think I'm going to end up using here, depending on the draw week out. What do you guys think of the switch? Obviously, Rosario is going to stay on Epicenter. Rosario kind of fits Mo Donegal perfectly, doesn't he? I mean, that one-run, massive closer type horse, it's what we always talk about being Rosario's biggest strength. He's not going to have Rosario for the Derby. Does that affect your opinion on Mo Donegal at all?
I mean, I think if you're trying to debate between the two, that would be the one that would be, well, Rosario picked Epicenter, The other part of it is to kind of counteract what I just said. Rosario's kind of married to Asmussen at this point. He's riding all of his horses, no matter if it's a Derby, runner or a $10,000 claimer in the second race at Oaklawn. That's his guy for the moment. So there's a little bit of that too. But as far as what fits a rider, certainly Mo Donegal fits Rosario. And you could probably say Epicenter would fit Irad a little better than Rosario might. So it's kind of interesting how to look at that. But, I'm with you. It's like Mo Donegal is a little scary because you do see the talent. I'm with you too, though. It's just like, did he get the perfect setup in that race? They went awfully fast. He still was just barely able to catch him. I don't know. I'm on the fence with him.
Well, if you go back to our reaction of watching the Wood Memorial, we talked about how Mo Donegal won because Rosario gave him that perfect trip, and it just caught early voting, who's not even going to the Derby, it sounds like, going to the Preakness. So it was exciting to watch. It was exciting to think, hey, the New York circuit is back, but I am kind of with you guys. I'm getting weaker and weaker on Mo Donegal. As Steve brings up, the Wood does not have good stats for hitting the board in the Derby.
But I would say this is the best version of the Wood we've seen in a while. So I do want to at least make sure I give some credit in that front. And I think Chris brings up a good point here. Why is Zandon taking so much steam here? Well, Mo Donegal's numbers are a little bit better. And by the way, Mo Donegal beat Zandon, right, in the Remsen. So to me, I can answer why I'm more interested in Zandon than Mo Donegal, but it's tactical speed. I think you're going to see Zandon in a better position in the Derby than you're going to see Mo Donegal. He's a little closer up in the Remsen. And I think Pratt is going to get him in a little bit more forwardly placed spot, whereas Mo Donegal is just that one big run horse who's going to be coming from way back in a race, which I'm worried is going to be a little devoid of speed.
I was laughing at Nick. I've written it down on my calendar, notes and Equibase, and anywhere I can. Do not play Mo Donegal. I've had to do that before as well. Aaron, did you have anything to add to that about why Zandon's taking so much steam?
Yeah, for me, it certainly is. He can, if you watch his three races, and they'll be up this weekend where I kind of analyze all three of his prep races, he makes moves on the turn, and that's what you have to do as a horse that kind of comes from out of it. In his case, he can't come from the last two races. But I'm with Somich. I think he can sit a little closer. But regardless of where he's at, he can make his move on the turn. He's proven it 3 straight times. And then in the last race, he proved he could make a big move on the turn and then finish and run down a horse like Smile Happy, who he was still 2 lengths behind, even though he got up into third on the turn. He still had to go get a horse, and he went out there and did it. And so that is 100%, a million percent, a billion percent how a horse coming from behind wins the Kentucky Derby. They've got to get in that position when they hit the stretch, and then they still got to be able to finish. He's proven he could do it. That's why I like him a little bit better than Mo Donegal for this race specifically.
Yeah, and I think we all like Mo Donegal's future. He could have a really great 3-year-old, 4-year-old campaign if they keep him going. But for the Derby specifically, it's easy to fall in love with a horse like this. That's why Nick said he had to write down "Don't play Mo Donegal." So if you don't like him now, maybe if you're worried, do what Nick did. Just go ahead and scratch down a note putting that. Do you want to talk about the Arkansas circuit quick? Because how about this, Aaron? The Arkansas circuit did produce American Pharoah in 2015. But you look at 2022 now, and this was like the exact opposite of a Triple Crown trail producing circuit. So what happened? Why did Arkansas just kind of fall off the map this year?
Well, that's the magic question, right? And well, you asked it, I guess. That's why. No bigger fan of Arkansas than me. I'll start with that before I just rip this apart. But it just felt like Arkansas has two local guys that year in and year out actually have like the big 3-year-olds, and it's Asmussen and Cox, and their best ones ran at Louisiana this year. So that's number one. And then number two, you don't see these California horses, the really good ones, shipping into Arkansas anymore. They've went to Louisiana, and that's the biggest one. You look through the history of the Arkansas circuit, it relies heavily on a guy named Bob Baffert. Well, he's kind of sent his trash to Arkansas the last few years. And then Doug O'Neill has sent his horses to Louisiana. I know Slowdown Indy didn't really work out in Louisiana, but Hot Rod Charlie last year. So it was just one of those situations where the locals weren't any good and their shippers were worse. I mean, it was a bad year. So just those two combinations. And I don't know, maybe the timing of the races are kind of throwing people off. You know, they jack with the timing a little bit. Maybe that'll iron itself out. So we'll see. But yeah, there's no doubt it's the 5th one on the list.
Yeah, definitely the lowest. And it's tough to rate Kentucky just because it seems like obviously I think the Turfway ones are a joke because they're on synthetic. And I realize that, like certain horses have come through Turfway. I know Animal Kingdom's one example that won the Derby off Turfway, but Animal Kingdom also was able to run on dirt a couple times after that and look pretty good, where we've seen the horses that won at Turfway struggle on dirt afterward, except for Tawny Port, came back and looked pretty good at Keeneland. Keeneland's tough for me because none of those horses originated there, really. I mean, they're all coming from another place and trying to scoop up some late points in the Derby to kind of make it through. So Kentucky to me is more of a hybrid of them. I kind of consider Arkansas, New York, Florida, Louisiana, and California the big 3, and then people come to Kentucky to kind of scoop up what's left over.
This has been a presentation of RacingDudes.com, your destination for all things horse racing and sports betting. Whether you want free winners, expert insider picks, up-to-the-minute trackside weather reports, or podcasts and videos for bettors of all skill levels, never make another wager without visiting the Racing Dudes. First,